And we're live. Hi.
Hi. Well, I got to tell you, this is the first time I've ever done this kind of an interview. I've done Skype, but what would you call this?
Live on Twitter.
It's a Twitter interview.
Yeah.
I gave my Twitter account to these young kids that were managed.
The Gravel teens.
Yeah. But I had a Twitter account since 2008, and I just never used it. I find it difficult to be limited in the words that I use.
It's hard, yeah.
But yeah, well, obviously, Trump has it down to a science.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple questions from people. They were curious. One was what you think of Elizabeth Warren.
I like her. I would characterize her as being tightly wound, which not bad. It means that she talks fast, she thinks fast, she's very able, and so the three persons that I really respect are Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Tulsi Gabbard. I think opposite of Elizabeth is Tulsi has an aplomb, a gravitas that I've never seen in any other elected official in my life, and I'm just drawn to it. She's a unique person, has a unique background, and so does Warren. My God, what a background she has! And of course, but my choice for president is Bernie, and he could either pick Liz Warren as his vice president, or better still, pick her to be his Secretary of Treasury. And that would give her the power to do what she wants. Now, the reason I'm not all that keen for her being vice president, because she's on up there in age, and that would give us two elderly people in the White House. And I should complain about elderly. But I think it would be very advantageous to pick a person like Tulsi Gabbard, who's 38 years old, got an extensive background even at 38, and have her mature in a vice presidential position. So that would be my recommendation to Bernie, to pick Tulsi, and then to pick Liz Warren as Secretary of the Treasury, so that she can take all of these plans that she has and implement them directly, and be able to interface with the new Congress.
Gotcha.
Does that help?
It does, yeah. Some people have criticisms of Tulsi Gabbard. What do you think about them?
Tulsi, here again, the criticisms I don't think are valid anymore. There are criticisms from her being raised in a very conservative, religious household, and so it took her a great deal of time to mature out of this, and I've read all the negative pieces they've done on her, and all I can say is there's a maturation process that we all undergo, and hers was such a process, and so when she says now that's no longer my view, well, I think that people ought to look at themselves and realize, well, how did I feel about this when I was 20 years old, 21, or 18 when I was in the household? So, no. And her family is a political family who are very conservative, so that she's been able to shake that off, and of course, that comes from a religious community. I don't know how religious she is, but here too, having been in politics most of my life, I started when I was 15 years old, and I've recognized that there's a maturation process, there's a growth process, and when a person experiences that, that's a good sign. If they don't mature, that's a bad sign. You get a lot of people in politics that don't mature, and Tulsi has matured. And how I acquainted myself with that is just looking at all the charges against her. And they may have been valid. Some of them I don't think are valid, but they're not valid now. and she's really showing herself who she is. When she stands up to Obama on the issue of military issues, and of course was pushed away, she resigned from the Democratic campaign committee in the House, and Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton and Obama were really screwing Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. They denied him, they cheated him out of the nomination, and he could have beaten Trump.
Yeah.
And here again, the Democrats have this habit of stealing victory from the jaws of defeat.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if I got that right. But, so, no, I would, I am very accepting of people who have interesting backgrounds, and all that. But when it's a background, what it means is that they learn through life, and that's so valuable to happen. And that's what I see in Tulsi Gabbard, just looking in.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I think one other question, somebody wanted to know what you think about the charges against Julian Assange and how he's being treated.
Oh, God. I think it's horrible. If I were to cast a Medal of Freedom, I would give one to Chelsea Manning, one to Julian Assange, and one to Snowden in Russia. And these are heroes in my mind. And what they're guilty of is in trying to inform the people as to what their government is doing. And that's the definition of democracy, is informing the people so that they can make intelligent decisions. And so Julian Assange, great. I mean, he's got some rough feathers. I've seen him. He's made some mistakes. He may have a supersized ego, but who doesn't when you're really into a battle? So, no, I think Julian Assange has done great service to global democracy.
Anybody watching, if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat. Somebody asked what you think about Tulsi Gabbard's foreign policy positions.
I like it. The foreign policy, which is the primary foreign policy, is to oppose regime change. And I think regime change is ridiculous. She's also opposed she wants to close military bases. We have 800 military bases around the world. It's pathetic. Here we go. Compare us to China. China has got the Belt and Road, and what they want to do is to be able to raise economically the people of the world by improving roads, improving communications, improving ports, all of that. And so, what are we doing? We're the ones that sell most weapons in the arms bazaar of the world. If you want to make a comparison with Russia and China and the United States, you have to have an overview, because we get so much bias and of course the mainstream media is controlled by Wall Street and the military-industrial complex. So we've been dumbed down into thinking. But if you want to look at the situation with China, Russia, and the United States, you look at their military budgets. That's what you do. What are they spending their money on? Well, Russia is less than 10% of the American budget. China is pushing 15% of the American budget. So where are they a threat to us in any real sense? They're not. If they were a threat, they'd be arming themselves to the teeth and they'd be spending more money. Oh, sure. They both got, you know how many nukes China has? Intelligence tells us that they have 200 nukes. How many do we have? 7,000. You begin to look at this and you double take it. And what the hell's going on? What are they writing about? And then what disturbs me is there are two things that are going to destroy the planet. Is nuclear. And of course, what did Obama do? He started the refurbishment of the nuclear establishment, spending $1.7 trillion to beef up the nuclear capability. And of course, that means that we're going to spend more on submarines, more on airplanes, more on all of this stuff. And it's not 1.7 trillion. If you know the record of the Pentagon, where they have cost overruns that are 100, 200%, well, What we're talking about is maybe $3-4 trillion that we're spending on a weapon that's not usable. Why do I say it's not usable? If anybody used a weapon, it would create a nuclear winter, and so we would destroy the planet. And so when people say we've got to have a retaliatory capability, don't worry about retaliating, you'll be dead. So why spend the money on retaliating? And what, China's, with their 200 weapons, are going to go out? Then you hear about the South China Seas. China has got one aircraft carrier and they're building another one. We got 11.
Yeah.
Okay? So who's really out there in the South China Sea? Well, what happened, the Chinese are very clever. They dug the soil near the islands and made these islands larger, where they can put airfields on. So what the number of islands, I forget but probably they have maybe 10 or 5 or 10 with these islands, and what they are, they're unsinkable aircraft carriers. That's what they are.
Yeah.
They got an airfield, and they're unsinkable because the Chinese are only interested in the well-being of the South China Sea, because that is their livelihood. The shipping lanes that the South China Sea. And so what we would do is, if we were at war, and they know this strategically, that the Straits of Malacca would be cut off to the Chinese. Singapore is an ally of the United States, so that would be a problem. So the Chinese don't want any war. What they want to do is make products and use their industry to bring the people up economically in the world, the way they did. And this is an awesome statistic. China, in 3 decades, has raised 500 million people from poverty to middle class.